You know, we've all had those mornings
Oh, definitely.
where you wake up from an incredibly vivid dream and maybe you lived an entirely different life in it. You fell in love, you had a family, you lived in a house where you knew like the creak of every single
Oh,
floorboard.
it feels completely real.
Exactly. And then your eyes snap open. You are just lying in your own bed. The ceiling is familiar, but you have this hollow feeling in your chest that is completely alien.
Yeah, that disorientation is intense.
It really is. For a few minutes, or even for the rest of the day, you are actively grieving a life and a family that never actually existed. It is just profoundly disorienting.
And I mean, that disorientation happens because your brain processed all those fictional emotions as absolute undeniable reality.
Right.
The neural pathways firing during that dream state are virtually indistinguishable from a waking memory. So when you wake up, the physical evidence of your surroundings abruptly contradicts your emotional state.
Okay, so now I want you, our listener, to imagine that dream didn't just last for a single REM cycle on a Tuesday morning.
Oh boy. Yeah, imagine it lasted for 12 agonizing years. And imagine that fabricated reality was literally the only thing keeping your mind from completely shattering under unimaginable physical torture.
It is a horrific scenario.
It really is. And that is the harrowing premise where we find ourselves today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
We have a massive stack of sources on the table for you today, including D.P. Kirk's original text, a couple of dedicated reader's guides, critical literary reviews, and even some clinical research notes on dissociative trauma.
We really dug into the psychology for this.
We did. Our mission today is to pull all of this together to explore this profound psychological shift in a very specific section of literature. We're talking about Chapter 13, which is titled Ruins, from Kirk's 2017 post-apocalyptic fantasy novel, San Vitae, The Awakening.
Yes, and to truly unpack the emotional gut punch of Ruins and, why it operates as a masterclass in narrative pacing, we first have to understand what the protagonist is waking up from.
Right, the context is everything here. Exactly. We are dropping into a dark, highly complex world, and Kurien's transition back to reality is incredibly violent.
Which makes total sense because we're not dealing with a standard dystopian wasteland here. I mean, since you likely already follow the broader strokes of the San Vitae universe, you know we are thrust right into the middle of this massive, bloody ideological war.
Yep, the ancient factions.
Exactly. The Santerrie who wield Vitae, that really powerful blood-based magic clashing against the Humanis La Luna purebloods and their high-tech Devite weaponry.
Right.
But Kurien isn't just a normal soldier caught in the crossfire. He is a Sanite. He carries this terrifying feral demon aspect tethered to his very soul.
And that demonic aspect is basically the key to understanding his 12-year imprisonment in that subterranean facility, the tomb at a time.
The Inquisitors really did a number on him there.
They did, because they aren't just locking him in a cell, they are actively suppressing his innate abilities. They use specialized Devite energy weapons on him round the clock.
Right, and we often talk about Devite as just like anti-magic tech.
Yeah, but looking at the supplementary lore guides, we see the mechanics are so much more visceral.
Oh, definitely.
The Devite technology operates on a biosuppressive frequency. It literally coagulates or severs the ethereal blood connection of a Sanite's vitae.
Wait, so it's not just nullifying his magic, it's violently short-circuiting his biological ability to heal.
Precisely. The physical trauma inflicted upon him over a decade is absolute. And because his healing factor is constantly being disrupted by these frequencies, the pain is entirely inescapable.
God, that sounds awful.
It is. And the human mind, when faced with an inescapable, agonizing reality, it has to adapt to survive.
I was reading through the psychological research notes we pulled for this deep dive, specifically the stuff on dissociative fugue states.
Yeah, that stuff is fascinating.
It really is. I kept thinking about an electrical breaker box in a house. If a massive power surge hits the system like, say, 12 years of relentless torture, the breaker violently trips to shut off the power.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. It plunges the house into darkness, but it prevents the entire structure from catching fire and burning to the ground. That is exactly what Kurien's brain does.
Yep. It trips the breaker.
Yes. It completely walls off the trauma and builds this 12-year mental fantasy where he lives a happy, mundane life with his master Myasuchi and their fictional son, Han.
That breaker analogy is perfect, actually, because the fantasy is just a structural defense mechanism. But, a breaker can only stay tripped for so long before the system forces a reset.
And what a reset it is.
Right. Kurien's feral demon aspect eventually takes the wheel, slaughters his captors in this chaotic blackout, and forces an escape. Which brings us right to the opening lines of Chapter 13.
Yes, this is where I want to really dig into Kirk's writing style. Because taking a character from a 12-year dissociative coping mechanism and slamming them back into cold, hard reality is risky.
It's extremely risky.
If an author fumbles that transition, they give the audience massive emotional whiplash.
But Kirk avoids that whiplash by just completely refusing to ease us into the realization.
He really does. He just drops us in.
Exactly. He shatters the illusion using stark, unglamorous, physical reality. The chapter literally opens with Kurien falling out of a refuse tunnel.
Talk about an unceremonious entrance.
Right. The sensory overload is immense. He's emerging from a subterranean tomb into the blinding light of a ruined city.
And his mind is still frantically trying to stitch reality back together.
Yeah, his first instinct, his conditioned response from the last 12 years, is to look around for Myasuchi and Han.
But they aren't there. Instead, he realizes he is completely naked, coated in gore, and clutching this gaunt, malnourished, totally unfamiliar woman who is wearing a tattered medical gown.
Sharina.
Yes, Sharina. Another prisoner he unwittingly dragged along during his feral escape. And I have to say, looking at the critical reviews of this opening, some readers were pretty thrown off by what happens next.
I can see why, yeah.
Because a lesser writer might have used this exact moment for, like, sweeping high fantasy melodrama.
Yeah.
Kurien falling to his knees in the rubble, screaming at the heavens, weeping over his lost fictional family.
Oh, totally. That's the cliche.
But Kirk actively undercuts that drama.
He undercuts it with an incredibly dark, crude humor. I mean, Sharina regains consciousness, realizes she is essentially resting right against Kurien's, well, his naked anatomy.
Yep. It's incredibly awkward.
She scrambles away in utter bewilderment and just bluntly mutters, "From the pit and into the shit."
I actually laughed out loud reading that line.
It's great.
It's so jarring, but it is brilliant. Why do you think Kirk chose to use humor there instead of letting Kurien immediately process his grief?
Well, because immediate, profound grief wouldn't be psychologically accurate.
Really?
Yeah, when someone emerges from a severe dissociative state, the primary emotion isn't usually sorrow, it's intense confusion.
Oh, that makes sense.
The humor forces Kurien, and the reader, honestly, to focus on the immediate, awkward physical reality of the present moment. You can't drown in existential dread about your fake family when a strange woman is cursing at you while scrambling away from your naked body in a pile of garbage.
It grounds the high fantasy lore instantly. We have blood magic, demons, inquisitors, but that single line of dialogue brings it right back to gritty, messy humanity.
Absolutely.
It breaks the tension. But that awkward icebreaker doesn't last long, does it? Because the physical environment quickly forces Kurien to confront his shattered mind.
No, it doesn't. And this is where we see the concept of spatial memory come into play.
Right.
We anchor our sanity to physical landmarks. So Kurien climbs out of the refuse tunnel and looks over the ruined city of Roanth. He is actively searching for landmarks to validate his 12-year dream.
Right. He looks over at that specific Kondo Rikuko's place.
Yeah.
He expects to see weapon marks on the stone from a battle he clearly remembers fighting during his fantasy. But the stone is completely bare.
The physical evidence contradicts his memory.
Yeah.
And when our physical landmarks don't align with our memories, the cognitive dissonance actually physically hurts.
And that is the exact moment the fabricated reality just crumbles for him.
It really is.
He is forced to vocalize his confusion, to admit out loud that his memories don't match the physical world. He turns to Sharina, essentially looking for an anchor.
But Sharina has her own horrific trauma to manage.
She really does. And she doesn't coddle him at all. She just bluntly tells him, "You think, Kurien, you sound even more screwed up than me."
Yeah, she does not hold back.
Okay, I want to push back on Sharina's reaction here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
I was reading some of the Reader's Guide discussions, and a few people pointed out that Sharina seems incredibly resilient for someone who is just held in a torture facility.
I've seen that critique.
Right. She's throwing out sarcastic jokes, she's cursing, she has this very abrasive, tomboyish charm. Doesn't that feel a bit unrealistic? How is she this feisty after enduring the tomb out of time?
It's a fair question, but if we look at the clinical literature on surviving chronic abuse, her abrasive nature isn't resilience.
It's not.
No, it's a highly fortified psychological shield.
Oh, I see.
She is projecting an exaggerated toughness because in the facility they just escaped from, showing vulnerability meant death or being singled out for worse experiments.
Yeah.
Sarcasm and bluntness are literally her armor.
So she's essentially daring him to try and hurt her, beating him to the punch by acting tough.
Exactly. But Kirk is a masterful character writer, and he doesn't let her wear that armor for the entire chapter.
Thank goodness, because that would get grating.
Yeah, he strips away those defenses in a beautifully mundane way.
You're talking about this scene where they find the semi-intact bedroom in the ruined condo, right?
Yes.
The pacing here is just incredible. The noise of the escape fades away. The adrenaline drops. They are just two exhausted people looking for something to cover themselves with.
Just basic survival at that point.
Right. Sharina is rifling through a dusty dresser, and she literally chucks a pair of black pants at Kurien's head. But then Kurien finally gets a clear, quiet look at her.
He sees her body, and it is gaunt and malnourished from the Inquisitors, bearing all the undeniable physical signs of captivity.
It's brutal.
It is. But it is also covered in extensive, intricate tattoo work. Deep black flowers and vines, contrasting sharply against her pale alabaster skin. And the crucial detail is how Kurien looks at her.
Yes, the look.
He doesn't look at her with the clinical detachment of a fellow prisoner, and he doesn't look at her with pity either. He looks at her with genuine aesthetic admiration.
And then he clumsily offers her a can of scavenged tomato juice.
Yeah.
It's such a small human gesture. But that look of admiration completely breaks Sharina. She starts trembling.
She told her falls apart.
She confesses that the way he's looking at her with actual respect and admiration makes her feel more exposed than the horrific torture she endured from the Inquisitors.
It's a powerful scene.
Now, wait a second. I need you to unpack this for me because I had a really hard time wrapping my head around that statement.
Sure.
I read that section and honestly it felt a little melodramatic on the surface. How can a guy looking at your tattoos be more traumatizing than a decade of literal physical torture? That feels totally counterintuitive to basic human survival.
I get why you'd think that. It seems counterintuitive until we break down the mechanics of trauma and agency.
Okay, lay it on me.
Torture is something inflicted upon you by an external force. It strips you of your physical agency, yes, but your mind can retreat from it.
Like Kurien did.
Exactly. You can dissociate, you can build walls, you can tell yourself that the pain isn't you, it's just something happening to your body.
Yeah.
You expect cruelty in a torture chamber, so your defenses are constantly raised.
Right, you are braced for impact at all times.
Precisely. Admiration, however, asks you to lower the drawbridge yourself.
Oh, wow.
To accept admiration, you have to acknowledge that you still have inherent worth. You have to accept that you are still human, and that you are capable of being seen as beautiful despite being fundamentally broken.
That makes a lot of sense.
For someone who has been reduced to a mere test subject for years, whose entire existence has been defined by pain and worthlessness, being treated like a human being is terrifying. It requires her to be vulnerable in a way torture never did.
Wow, okay, yeah, that makes complete sense now. When she says, I was held in metal chairs, flung against cold stone beds, and none of those horrifying things made me feel the way your eyes just did.
It's a heavy line.
That line gave me chills. The Inquisitors couldn't take her humanity because she had buried it so deep. But Kurien's gaze demands she dig it up and offer a piece of it back to him.
Yes. And we really cannot overlook the significance of the tattoos themselves here.
Right, because they are a choice.
Exactly. Ink is permanent. It is a way of claiming ownership over your own body. The scars were given to her by the Inquisitors, but the black vines and flowers were chosen by her.
I see.
So Kurien admiring the tattoos is him admiring the piece of her that she chose for herself before the trauma.
And Kurien's response is just as vital. He doesn't offer a grand sweeping speech to try and fix her.
He doesn't.
He just gently reassures her, saying, you are not worthless. This is not ordinary. He validates the terrifying vulnerability she just offered him.
It is so well done.
It's a profound moment of human bonding sitting in the literal dust of a destroyed world. Just two fundamentally broken people finding a tiny spark of connection.
It really is the emotional core of the chapter. But of course, a narrative needs friction to move forward.
Oh, absolutely. This is D.P. Kirk we're talking about. He's not going to let us just sit comfortably in that warm, fuzzy feeling for too long.
Not a chance.
Just as you, the reader, start to feel this tentative romance and trust building between them, the author drops a massive piece of dramatic irony right into our laps. It completely spikes the tension.
He introduces a ticking clock.
Yes.
Sharina, finally feeling safe enough to drop her guard, decides she needs to warn Kurien about what is lurking out there in the ruins. She recounts what she saw during the chaotic escape from the vault.
She describes a terrifying creature, right?
Yeah, a demon drenched head to toe in blood with deathly hollow red eyes.
She is completely terrified. She tells him, whatever you do, if you see this thing, don't wait for me. Just run. Save yourself.
And here is the massive aha moment for the listener.
Yes. Because, which is set up so perfectly by the previous chapter, Escape, the reader knows exactly what that creature is. That blood-drenched, hollow-eyed demon is Kurien.
It is Kurien's possessed feral Sanite form.
Exactly.
When his mind was trapped in the fantasy, the demon took over his physical body to slaughter the guards. Sharina was just collateral baggage he dragged along in his bloodlust.
She has absolutely no idea.
None. She has no idea that the terrifying monster she is warning him about is the very man sitting in front of her sharing a can of tomato juice.
I kept thinking of it like the ultimate werewolf scenario.
Oh, I like that.
It's like a werewolf waking up in human form the morning after a full moon, completely naked in the woods next to a fellow survivor. And the survivor leans in and whispers, "Hey, be careful. There is a horrific, bloodthirsty wolf roaming these woods. I saw it tear a man in half."
Yeah, that is exactly it.
It creates this brilliant undercurrent of dread.
It completely shifts the dynamic of their relationship for the reader.
It really does. Because you're watching them bond, you're watching them heal, but in the back of your mind, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
You know the peace cannot last.
Right. If Sharina finds out he is the demon, she might try to kill him out of sheer panic. But if Kurien confesses, he risks losing the only genuine human connection he's had in over a decade. He's completely trapped.
That is dramatic irony utilized to absolute perfection. The reader possesses critical information that the characters do not, which imbues every quiet, intimate moment with extreme fragility.
You are hyper-aware that this newly formed trust is built on a massive, unspoken lie of omission.
So bringing all of this together, the trauma, the divinity mechanics, the quiet moments of connection, and the looming dramatic irony, why does this specific chapter matter so much?
Good question.
If we look at the critical reviews we pulled, Ruins is consistently cited as a masterclass in literary pacing.
And that praise is entirely justified, I think. Consider the structure of the book leading up to this point.
Right, it's nonstop.
The preceding chapters are just saturated with visceral, high-octane fantasy action. You have characters tearing off heads, explosive vault escapes, swirling shields of San Vitae magic, and the devastating impacts of Vitae weaponry.
It is relentless, adrenaline-fueled momentum.
But then Kirk just slams on the brakes.
He really does.
He forces Kurien, Sharina, and us as the readers to just sit down, to sit in the quiet, dusty aftermath of all that violence. In this chapter, the focus isn't on the mechanics of the magic system. The focus is on the mental toll that the magic system, the technology, and the war take on the human mind.
Which is precisely why you should be excited to pick up San Vitae.
Yeah.
The Awakening, if you haven't already.
Highly recommend it.
It takes the highly familiar tropes of post-apocalyptic action and dark fantasy, and it completely subverts them.
Yeah, it turns them on their head.
It uses its intricate fantasy elements, the Vitae, the Sanites, the ancient warring factions, not just as flashy set dressing for combat sequences, but as a complex lens to explore deep, resonant psychological themes.
Right. The blood magic and the energy weapons are really just narrative tools the author uses to talk about the fragility of human sanity.
Exactly.
He's exploring the terrifying unreliability of our own memories. When your trauma is so profound that your brain physically alters your perception of reality, inventing a 12-year history just to keep you sane, I mean, what even is reality anymore?
How do you trust your own mind?
You can't.
At its core, Ruins transforms a fantasy epic into an intimate story about how two deeply broken people, stripped of literally everything, their clothes, their agency, their memories, attempt to rebuild their humanity from scratch.
It's beautiful.
They are sitting in the physical ruins of the city of Roanth, yes, but they are simultaneously navigating the metaphorical ruins of their own psychological lives. Kirk is essentially asking us to consider whether it is actually possible to build a solid foundation on shattered glass.
And it is just brilliant, empathetic storytelling. It's why this book needs to be next on your reading list. It absolutely delivers the massive cinematic action sequences you want from a dark fantasy, but it's the quiet, awkward moments that hit hardest.
The human moments.
Right? Sharing a tin of tomato juice, tossing a pair of black pants, navigating the terror of a kind look. Those are the things that will actually stick with you long after you close the cover.
The careful character work in this chapter elevates the entire novel beyond standard genre fiction into a profound, memorable character study.
I couldn't agree more. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the ruined world of Roanth and for exploring the incredibly complex minds of Kurien and Sharina with us today.
It was a great discussion.
But before we let you go, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Think back to that idea we started with, waking up from that vividly real, decades-long dream.
The 12-year illusion.
Right. We talked at length about how memory and dissociation can act as a shield, a mechanism to protect our minds from breaking under unimaginable physical pain. But when the torture finally stops and that psychological shield is violently ripped away by reality,
Yeah.
does mourning a fictional love a child, a partner, a life that never truly existed anywhere outside your own desperate protective mind, does losing that fiction hurt just as much as losing a real family?
That is the question.
Or does the knowledge that they were never real to begin with make the grief even harder to survive? It's something to ponder long after you put the book down.